Production and distribution of City Club forums on IdeaStream Public Media are made possible by PNC and the United Black Fund of Greater Cleveland, Incorporated.
Good afternoon, City Club members, students, educators, and community members joining us today. My name is Luke Kim. I'm a 12th grade student at Solon High School and president of the Youth Forum Council. Today, we are gathered here to discuss phones in schools, balancing learning, safety, and freedom and focus. In May of 2024, Governor Mike DeWine signed a bill requiring all schools in Ohio to enforce policies limiting phone use before July of 2025. Therefore, now some schools have very strict policies on phones or the use of yonder pouches. The whole objective is to improve schools' learning environments by removing distractions, such as personal technology devices, because they can cause a negative impact on students' education outcomes, relationships with peers, and their mental health. Today's forum serves as an opportunity to learn from our panelists and for students to engage in a meaningful dialogue about Ohio's new cell phone policy. Our conversation will dive into a more detailed explanation of the new policy, the trends schools have seen since its implementation, and how schools are balancing the use of technologies in their buildings. The panelists we are here with today are experts in their school fields and are here to answer questions from our sold-out audience. Our esteemed panelists joining us today are Jasmine Ferguson, Assistant Principal at Orange High School, Mario Snowden, Assistant Principal at Bluestone Elementary School, and Megan Weiskopf, Director of Teacher and Learning at Laurel School. The discussion will be moderated by Youth Forum Council Vice President of Communications, Zoe Xie, Jr. from Solon High School. Thank you all for joining us today.
Hi everyone, thank you all again for joining us for the first Youth Forum of 2025. I know it did get pushed back because of Cleveland weather, so we're very excited that we're still able to hold this forum. Again, my name is Zoe, and I'm the VP of Communications for the City Club of Cleveland's Youth Forum Council. And before we get into the bulk of our conversation, I would also like to thank our panelists for joining us today and taking time out of their very busy schedules. So, we just heard Luke talk a little bit about Ohio's newly passed House Bill 250, which requires that schools across Ohio place more of an emphasis on schools implementing a cell phone policy for students. So, starting with our speakers today, could you all just tell us a little bit more about your background and the unique perspectives that you can bring into the conversation? We can start with Ms. Ferguson.
Oh, well, thank you.
Yeah.
So I am a high school administrator at Orange High School. This is my 24th year in education. Before being a high school administrator, I worked as a teacher, social studies teacher. Actually, one of my students is here. Ms. Smith. So proud of you. So proud of her. So I taught social studies and then decided to go into administration. I think one unique perspective that I have to add to this conversation is that when we had a talk when this bill was first introduced, there was kind of this buzz. I was completely against it. There's no way. I'm like, there's no way we can get kids to not bring phones to school. Like, this is going to be panic. It's never going to work. And I thought, I'm just going to show evidence why this is terrible. We should not do this. And I'm not sure that my other administrative colleagues had the same perspective, but I know I was one of the voices in the room that didn't think it could happen. So.
Hello, my name is Mario Snowden. I am the assistant principal at Bluestone in Euclid. Previous to working with Euclid, I was in CMSD, working in administration. for 7 years. I've worked pre-K to 8, and now I'm in K to 5. And the one perspective that I would say that I can offer is having seen how students react at different age ranges, how I've seen behaviors and phones and how those two things interact. I think that I've been able to appreciate the legislation that came out and just being able to see students where there isn't the worry about cell phones. They know what the policy are, they adhere to the policy, and we don't have any kind of interactions. This year I can't count one incident that I've had with cell phones at all. So, it's been a pleasure.
Wow, congratulations.
I'm Megan Weiskopf. I'm the Director of Teaching and Learning at Laurel School. I've been an educator for 30 years. I started teaching in graduate school at Indiana University, teaching college. I've taught at 2 different independent schools, one in Indiana, and then I've been at Laurel for 23 years. Taught 5th grade English, and then I've really taught every level of English up through 12th grade. At Laurel, I've been a department chair, and then I've also been an upper school director, and now the Director of Teaching and Learning, which is a K through 12 role. So I've got a kind of a big sweep and a long career is watching the rise of cell phones from the very beginning, back when I thought I was being stung by a bee because I was holding a student's cell phone in my pocket and it started buzzing and I didn't know what it was. So it's been quite a journey for me. I'm also a mom of a 21-year-old and a 23-year-old, so I've seen the impact and helped navigate the impact of figuring out from the family perspective in the home, the parent-child relationship and how cell phones impact that piece of things. And then I'm also the co-director of Laurel Center for Research on Girls. So when this conversation really started gathering steam, we at the Center for Research on Girls were looking really closely at the research and what the research does and does not tell us. And I think there are some broad claims that are getting made that aren't actually backed up in any kind of causal way. There might be some correlative pieces, but not in causative ways around the research, but there are also some really clear trends and patterns that we knew we needed to pay attention to. So I've been looking at this from a lot of angles, and I still do not consider myself an expert because it's all changing so fast. So.
Yeah, that's great. So Mrs. Weiskopf, you specifically mentioned conducting more of an inquiry at Laurel School. So
Yes.
can you tell us a little bit about what the process was like, who was involved, and some of the results that you found?
Yes. So in May of last year, we conducted a week-long inquiry at our school when we had a cell phone ban just for that week. It was too short for that to be considered a research study. You're not going to get any kind of significant results. A week is not even long enough for the extinction burst to be complete. You're still going to have responses and reactions and feelings that are based on sort of the immediate shock of a policy like this that none of our students had faced before. What we were trying to do actually was surface the challenges that we knew we were going to have to overcome if we were to implement a ban later on, which we indeed did in October. So we got student and parent and teacher feedback on what the benefits were, but also what the challenges were, because we knew we were going to have to design around those challenges and try to minimize the impact on students. We implemented our current ban, which is a cell phone ban, but it's not an all tech device ban. It's just a cell phone ban during the school hours. And we did that in October and tried to make sure that we were addressing things like students' concerns about how their parents could reach them. We implemented a new PA system and safety system in the school to handle communication if something were to go awry. We also instituted bells. We're a no-bell school. We were a no-bell school, and our students reported using their cell phones to tell what time it was and make sure they were getting to class on time. So we have actually instituted bells as part of a response to the things that we found in that inquiry in May. So we tried to be responsive. We worked with our school government, but it was definitely the school creating the policy and not the students designing it.
Yeah, that's great. So obviously there are some factors, very important factors, that must be taken into consideration when creating these cell phone policies that apply to so many students. So the rest of our panelists are also very familiar with their school cell phone policies. So could you guys discuss some of the unique factors that you took in when implementing your own school cell phone policies and maybe how they might differ from Mrs. Weiskopf's?
I'll start with this. Last year when I was in CMSD, I was at East Clark, and we implemented the cell phone box. It was just like a metal box, And as students came in through the security system, they would just put their middle school, so we did 5th through 8th, and they would just put their phones in a number-coded box. And so in that box, they knew their number. They would put it in every morning. Some, as the year progressed, they would keep one in their Ugg boot or shoes, and then that became an issue. But for the most part, once they got used to it, once they got over the initial hump, it was a kind of fair process. We didn't have any major incidents of, anyone needing to go run to their phone or anything like that. But it also showed me that students, they get used to things just as we all do. We get used to having things. And once we get used, just like lane assist in the car for adults, once you get used to it, you start to rely on it. And then it's not until you don't have it that you say, okay, I actually don't need this, or I actually can be comfortable without having my phone on me all the time. And I think that that's one of those things that as technology advances, students will have to battle, for the rest of their lives.
So for us, to go back to the first part of your question, implementing the policy, I want to ask our students here at table 25 if anybody can say out loud what our school policy is about phones. A little louder? Off and away. That's it, really simple. When the legislation first came down, we knew that we had to implement a policy by July of 2025. So again, I'm in the meeting. We shouldn't do this, it's never gonna work, this is crazy. And it was simply stated, we're just gonna say off and away. The phone should be not visible. We shouldn't see them in classes, we shouldn't see them in hallways, they need to be off and away. So we started with the signage policy, cell phone with a red circle and a slash through it and just says off and away. And that was supposed to be the verbiage. So we had a series of meetings with the faculty and staff to talk about how to approach a student. It shouldn't be a confrontational issue, right? You see a student with a phone, you don't say, why is your phone out, right? Maybe start with hello. And then get into, maybe they're not thinking about the phone. It just becomes an extension of your arm after a while. So with the introduction of faculty and staff, with clear communication to parents and students, meetings at the beginning of the year with all the students as well and getting their input. It still came as a great surprise and shock, I think, to everyone, but the policy is very simple. Everyone knows what's expected. I can't say that it's followed with 100% fidelity, but I'm very clear that people know what's expected of them.
Yeah. So we can clearly see that these cell phone policies vary across even the Cleveland area. And so before we move further, I would like to bring attention to the copies of cell phone policy models that were provided directly from the Department of Education and Workforce Development. So many schools use these as kind of a guide before making their own policy. And it's pretty clear that these policies are made mostly by teachers, administration, and sometimes even the government. So, in your opinion, do you think it would be beneficial to include the student perspective into the conversation? And what are some of the potential benefits or drawbacks that we could see from doing that?
Well, I think including student perspective at Laurel helped us, again, surface those challenges, and that was really important. I will say that schools generally, when they make policies, are making policies from the adult perspective. That's our job. We're here to keep students safe and make sure they're learning. That said, having conversation with students, being here, all of us who are here, recognize that this is not a simple thing and that feelings about it are probably all over the map, but also probably pretty strong wherever students stand. So making a policy and then saying, oh, not it, you guys just figure it out, is not gonna be beneficial either. So I think it's important to have conversation with students and include student voice in problem solving, but I think policy design, it has to come from the adults. That's our job.
Right.
Yeah, I would agree. I think one of the hazards with including student voice, especially when legislation is the driving force behind the decision, is that it gives the students a sense that they're being asked for their opinion, but then it's disregarded, right? So we ask students, what do you think about the cell phone policy? And a student at our school did some research for an article in the paper, in the student paper. And in preparation for this, I wanted to see the results. And overwhelmingly, this policy is terrible. You know, I got in trouble because my mom texted me in class and it was something really important. And so when we're asking for student voice, overwhelmingly, the majority of students are saying absolutely not. we don't want this policy. It's not helpful, get rid of it. So I think it's difficult to incorporate student voice in this sense. I think it's helpful to include student voice so that they understand what's expected, maybe substitution or coping strategies, maybe how they can be supported or what consequences might be if they continue, why we've enacted this or why the state legislature sees it as important. But it is difficult when you're diametrically opposed and the opinions don't match.
I think there's one of those situations where, as adults, like we've gone through some of the stages that teenagers are going through, and we've seen like different bands that came on, not necessarily with cell phones, except for me. I think I'm the youngest up here. But with that, I remember like when cell phones came out and being in high school and like kind of that battle. So I understand what some students are going through. But then as an adult, you understand like the detriment that it causes. And students, as you still mature and get to a certain level within yourselves to understand like your mental health, what brings you peace, you may not see some of the things that adults will see. And so in that, it comes this place where it's like, I want to give you a say-so, but at the same time, I know better than you. Just in this moment, though. And so it's just one of those things that's like, it's a hard feeling, but it's also to save you later on.
Yeah. So sometimes it can be harder to include the student perspective into the conversation, but just taking a look into the audience, there's a lot of students here. So it's very obvious that you guys all care. So with a quick show of hands, how many of you guys are finding it hard to adjust to your school cell phone policy? Okay. Yeah,
There's an
there's
adult
a
with
few
her
hands.
hand up back there.
Yeah,
Table
some adults.
24. She's struggling.
So some adults with their hands up. So the Youth Forum Council worked to conduct a poll on Instagram, and we kind of asked students their thoughts on their school's cell phone policy. And what we found by collecting 115 responses from students all across the Cleveland area is that 63% of students actually opposed their school's phone policy for being more inconvenient and restrictive. And then 19% of students were just neutral to their school's decision. So clearly there's some pushback for students, and it's kind of hard for them to adjust. What advice can you give to students who are having a hard time with it?
I think it's a school's obligation when we put policies in place to also support students in navigating those policies. So I would suggest that students reach out to the adults who are their support network in a school. If you have an advisor, a faculty advisor, counselor, administrators, teachers, to get coping strategies and advice. That's something at Laurel, at the Center for Research on Girls, we talked a lot about various coping strategies that might be useful. I'm not sure how much students need them chronically. I think it's been more these acute moments, and so use your channels, use the adults, use your networks. That's the other reason we're here. We are here to set policy and keep you safe, but we're also here to nurture you and support you.
I think it's also important to understand the technology behind our phones and to understand why our brains feel like they're wired to continue to touch them, to interact with them, right? If I roll out of bed at 3 in the morning, I can't sleep, I'm like ordering J. Crew stuff. 3:30, what is this, right? Why is my brain wired to automatically do this thing? I talked to someone who works in the tech industry, and they shared with me at an event like this, tomorrow morning when you go to work, someone might say, oh, what'd you do yesterday? Oh, I was at the City Club. Well, the City Club is next to the Playhouse. Well, Playhouse is advertising a new play that's coming out. And all of a sudden, on the phone of your coworker, they're getting advertisements for the Playhouse Square for this play because you were here at this event today. And the technology is integrated in that way so that it makes you want to be in frequent contact with it, right? They sell this information. This person that I talked with that's in technology said if you knew the types of things they were doing to get your attention constantly, you'd probably want to get rid of your phone, right? You want to keep it far away from you. So I think helping not only students but adults, like we all need to understand that it's not just we need to stop doing it. Why are our brains now wired to be constantly in contact? I think they're a multi-billion-dollar industry based on just getting people to constantly be in contact with our phones. So I think through raising awareness, to recognize that you're being marketed to, that you are the product, right? When you're logging onto these services that are free, download this free app. Well, what are they selling? They're selling your information, right? You're the product. And so I think if you start to see what's behind the action, it might help us all make better informed decisions about our interaction with that technology.
Yeah.
So just by a show of hands, how many of you all feel safer in school, like in the school that's, has security guards at the door? How many of you all feel safer with your phones, just by a show of hands? And with those same hands up, how many of you all feel like if someone wanted to do harm to you, they could use those same cell phones to coordinate something to make you unsafe? It's one of those thoughts where it's like the same things that can help you are the same things that can hurt you. Not only is it a distraction, but it's a safety thing, because a lot of the situations that we've seen, whether it be CMSD or some of the other school districts, is where someone had a situation, they wanted to call someone outside of the school to come up to the school to address the situation, and that created an additional harm for everyone around. So it's like, if you don't have your cell phone and every situation has to go through an adult, like if you want to call out to your parents, if you want to do these things, in those moments, you're safe with an adult being able to filter through, being able to say, okay, I know this is a situation, so I can better help you get out of this situation, versus you being able to do it on your own with a cell phone. You can call your parent, they may not be able to get to you. You can call your friends, but that's only going to get you in legal trouble. So at the end of the day, how much safer are you with your cell phone in a school setting than without it?
Yeah. So diving more into the safety aspect, we know that when faced with abrupt changes, we tend to live in a world of what ifs. So I know there are a lot of parents in this room who are concerned of the cell phone policy restricting communication with their students, especially in cases of emergencies like lockdowns, fire drills, tornado drills. Are your schools having to adjust for these policies?
At our school, we haven't adjusted much because we already had some technology in place to help communicate emergencies to parents. So there is a new app that we're using this year, but we've always participated in the secondary communication of information. Try to stay away from having students text parents first, because sometimes the chain of information is incorrect, and before you know it, it's like playing telephone. So we want to be in charge of what is sent out. We send out official communication through either designated administrators or central office members. So I think we've enhanced the way that we're using it, especially because of the limited access to phones, but it hasn't changed because of the policy specifically.
As I said, we did add a PA system that I think is helpful in our school, but like you, Jasmine, I think we haven't had to make enormous changes. The one thing I will say, and this goes along with what you were saying, Mario, about safety and when you're using your phone and what that can do. We often, it's human nature to respond with the individual response. So if you're in a situation that's affecting a large group of people, you're concerned with your individual perspective and your individual response. But schools are charged with keeping the safety of the entire community. So if there were some sort of event and individual students are texting their parents to come or do whatever, you're going to actually very potentially restrict access because of traffic jams and what have you that prevents the emergency services from getting to the school in a timely way. That has happened. The police and emergency services actually endorse cell phone policies like these and say if the adults have cell phones, they can be the ones communicating out. But there is still availability. We all still have landlines at our schools, and so there are ways to get that information out. But if all kinds of individuals are sending that outward, then the community is going to have an influx of traffic that can actually impede help from getting as quickly to the building as it needs to.
Definitely.
I definitely agree with that. I couldn't imagine if all of my students during the fire drill had their cell phones, and most of the time students just know that they heard the fire alarm. They don't know that it's just a drill that we have to do every month. And so just the chaos that could come from some of the situations, because at the end of the day, safety is a lot of times just having not just information, but the right information. If every student chimed in when it was a lockdown and it was, 500 different text messages going to law enforcement, how would they really know? Because everything that you send from your phone is just your perspective. It's not, what's being seen on security cameras, what's being seen here. Your classroom could be on lockdown, but it could be a situation on the other wing of the building. And only way that you're going to know that is if you have all the information that the teachers and adults and administration have. So it's kind of one of those things where, again, it's like the adults have the information that you won't have. So, let us help you.
Yeah. So with students sometimes being super opposed to these policies, it's pretty obvious that we sometimes might experience some pushback. So what are some ways that you've been able to properly enforce these rules and combat student pushback?
I think, again, increasing awareness about the why, right? Because students are supposed to have their phones off and away or put them in a calculator pocket, but everybody knows that you can just bring a phone that doesn't work, right? Put that phone in, or like you said, stick the phone in your boot. Being vigilant, again, forming relationships with students, making sure that they feel comfortable that it's not a confrontational issue. I think all those things have been helpful and supportive in enforcement.
I would agree. I think it's about conversation and relationship. In the fall, when we were heading to assembly to sort of reveal the cell phone policy, it was an open secret that was what was about to happen at this assembly. And I was leaving the classroom, and one of my students said, "Mrs. Westcott, please do not do it. Just don't take our cell phones away." And I said, well, the thing you have to remember is this is not actually a judgment. And I think the grounds of the discourse can shift when it stops feeling like adults are slamming kids and saying, you're doing something wrong, and therefore we have to punish you by removing your cell phones. That is not what's happening. We're having an emerging understanding of a growing technology. The research is revealing real concerns around deep learning and around social connection and around safety, and we're responding to that, and the phones are designed to create some of the problems they're creating. It's not because the students are using them wrong or don't have enough self-control or are bad kids or are trying to break the rules. None of that is true. And if you leave the conversation in that kind of space, you're going to have a pushback that's really inflammatory. But if you remember and you rely on the relationships that you have in the school, student to adult, that this is actually about a joint effort to enhance safety for the whole community. It's not that students will say, oh, wonderful, we love the cell phone policy now, thank you so much. But I think it helps not to, we don't want our students to feel scolded. That isn't what's happening. And so I think that's a really important framework shift.
Yeah, and you all have been familiar with the school environment for a couple years now, and these policies are still evolving and developing. How do you guys see these policies changing in the upcoming 10 years?
I see more integration of technology. So I think we're in like a refractory period where everyone's using cell phones. It's kind of loosely enforced. And now we're thinking, oh my gosh, the sky is falling. We have to stop using cell phones out of school. They can't be here. I'd like to see a more reasonable reintegration, maybe with education. So I'm not saying we're at 100% compliance, but I'd like to see students be able to use them well and understand limits, maybe use some of the technology pieces that track your time on apps, or make sure that you're using reliable sources, because the train's running, we can't stop it, but how can we use it in a healthy way?
Right.
I'll chime in here. Also, too, to the point, so I feel like anytime that you do implement policies, I feel like you're going to have some kids who are just going to push up against the wall and the borders, and I feel like those have to be welcome situations, because a kid has to meet that boundary to understand the next time, like, okay, my phone got taken this time, I can't bring it out next time. And hopefully it creates a lesson, or they'll just keep bumping their head. But with the future of cell phones, I'm really against cell phones in education, period, because I feel like you have laptops. Most school districts are one-to-one, so you already have devices for any kind of needs that you may have, whether it is, a lesson or any kind of lesson aid or anything like that. But the phones are always going to be a communication aspect. And even if you do use it, for an app, I mean, how many of you all, realistically speaking, could use your calculator right now and get a notification from TikTok or Instagram and not, or resist that urge to click it and see. And then once you click it, then you're gonna scroll a little bit. And I think with technology, it's only gonna get worse. You know, it'll go from the cell phone to the watch, next, you know, the glasses, and then you'll be scrolling by blinking, and it'll just continue to be a never-ending, you know, situation, because at the end of the day, all of these companies just wanna make money off of you, off of your data. So the things that you react to, the more points they can gather from you. Oh, while they're at school, this distracts them. All right, I'm going to do more of that so that I can make more money off of them. And it's like, as again, students, you may not be in tune with like the news or tech news or most up-to-date news about your data and stuff like that. But a lot of times the adults are, and it's a combat situation where as teachers and administration, we have to combat that for your ability to be able to grow up and get, while you're in this developmental phase, everything that you need to get. Because once you get, you know, 18 years old, you're out of high school, the world is coming at you fast. And what you don't get now, you won't be prepared for. And no one, once you're out there, is gonna stop you and be like, hey, you need to focus. They're just gonna fire you. And then when you're not able to provide for your family or for yourself, then what happens? And it all starts at the foundation of no phones in school.
Wow. I wanted to share with Mario that, you know, your idea about technology and the like these
Like the
are,
blink, blink, blink.
I'm not wearing these because I need to see. These are Bluetooth glasses that connect to the internet that I can speak to and get my messages and Wi-Fi and everything, right? So my watch died, my phone's in my bag, but I don't even need it, right? And so I bought these glasses actually as a prop because remember I said I was opposed to changing the policy. I said, I'm gonna buy these glasses and wear them to the meeting when we're discussing that we need to take phones away. So I bought these in the meeting. I'm like, what are we gonna do with phones? We're gonna take glasses away? Like, you know, prescription lenses that do everything. I mean, I can say, hey Siri, what time is it? And she'll tell me, right? So what's the next step? I mean, I don't know if there are microchips maybe 100 years from now where actually people are already embedding things in their fingernails, and I saw someone embedding their credit card code on their fingernail, right? So I'm wondering how we can realistically incorporate technology without being dependent upon it.
Well, and that's when we were talking beforehand, the four of us, and thinking about what's coming in the future. The only thing I know about tech in the future is that I have no idea what's coming 10 years down the line. It's happening way too fast. It's evolving way too quickly. I think we have to use research as a map to guide us. We know that when you're interrupted by your cell phone, it takes you 20 minutes to refocus. That happens whether you're in the classroom, in the hallway, in your room, wherever you're trying to study, it happens. And that interferes with your ability to do deep focus, and that interferes with your ability to consolidate knowledge, and that interferes with your ability to creatively problem solve. And so we know all those things are true. Will technology catch up to that? There's like a predator-prey relationship going on here, and everything's evolving and then trying to catch up and evolving, and trying to catch up and evolving. And so I think we don't know. I think we have to keeping our eye on the trends. I think we have to make sure we're not listening to the sort of bombast of it's all, you know, chaos and the world's ending, and we also have to not be naive.
Yeah.
So we just keep following the research.
I just want to say, one, explaining all the features of your glasses was a flex. That was.
Oh, I like to flex.
Yes, it was.
I do like to flex.
Yes, it was.
But I also kind of bring it back to the idea of keeping kids kids. I don't know if you've heard that from your parents before, like keeping kids kids or keeping children in their children's place. Imagine before you had to worry about transportation or getting to school, you didn't have to walk to school. You didn't have to worry about riding your bike or catching a bus or whatever it was. That was something that wasn't on your plate. The more things that you put on your plate, the more things you have to worry about. And with technology, it's kind of the same way that we keep, you know, little kids listening to Kids Bop away from the, you know, the sexy reds and all that kind of stuff. The more that our kids have the ability to just be kids and be innocent, they don't need to know what else is in the world until they're ready to handle it. And I feel like it's the same way with technology. Some kids are mature enough to have their cell phones. They can put it up and have good practice habits with that. And some kids once they get it, it's a clutch. It's every time I feel a vibration, I don't even have to really feel a vibration. I can just look down. Oh, I looked at my leg, and my leg is connected to my pocket, and so now I got to check my phone. But the more that we're able to just keep kids in that place of being kids, being teenagers, being able to enjoy the things that we were able to enjoy when we were kids before cell phones, I think the better off our kids will be, because the more that we put onto them, the more that we'll have to combat mental health issues and that kind of stuff that disturbs their peace.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it.
Good afternoon. My name is Eliana Gorman. I am an 11th grader at MC Squared STEM High School and a member of the City Club's Youth Forum Council. Today, you have been enjoying a youth forum entitled Phones in Schools, Balancing Learning, Safety, and Freedom. Our speakers have been Jamie Ferguson, the assistant principal at Orange High School, Mario Snowden, the assistant principal at Bluestone Elementary School, and Megan Weiskopf, the director of teaching and learning at Laurel School. Moderating today's conversation has been Youth Forum Council's VP of Communications, Zoe Shee. We are about to begin the audience Q&A. We welcome questions from everyone, City Club members, students, educators, or those of you joining via our webcast. We ask that your questions be brief, to the point, and end in a question mark. We also ask that you guys ask questions based on the educator standpoint and what has been talked about during the forum, not necessarily the legislation standpoint. If you are joining us via webcast and you would like to ask a question, or text us at 330-541-5794, and we will ask as time allows. At today's microphone are two of your Youth Forum Council members, Serene and Matthew. Can we have our first question, please?
Yes, hello. My name is Amir Odin, and I am here with Cleveland Heights High School, but today I am with Metro Health. My question is, in case of emergencies like lockdown or active threats, what would you rather a student do without or with limited access to their cell phones to ensure their parents know that they are safe or that they are being guarded currently?
I think that's the school's job to communicate as it's always been. Yeah, it's the schools should be communicating, as Mario said, I think earlier, that's the locus of information that's going to be the most accurate and up to date, and it's going to be the least reliant on individual perspectives and a kind of scattershot approach to what's really happening.
I'll chime in here real quick. Go Tigers first and foremost. But absolutely, again, I could not imagine a situation where law enforcement has to get a specified set of information to be able to address a threat, and they're getting information from 500 different people sending, oh, I seen them there, I seen them there. And have you ever played that telephone game, like where somebody whispers in your ear and then you got to pass it down? If that is that kind of situation in a calm moment of recess, imagine what it would be when everyone is afraid or there's a lot of fear going on, and that goes for adults as well.
I'm Salvatore Miller from Solon High School, and my question is that the policy is really heavy on cell phone usage, but our school personally has a ban on not only cell phones, but a complete ban on personal technology, including personal laptops, iPads, AirPods, and etc. Do you see this being beneficial? What are your personal takeaways from that?
I think based on my prop, I think it is beneficial to include other forms of personal communication devices. And I should clarify that our off and away policy does include AirPods, watches, all of the any personal communication devices.
It's a time and a place for everything. If you're in science class and you're working with, your iPad, or you are studying at Study Hall and, music helps you, you're listening to Mozart or lo-fi or something like that, then it's a time and a place for it. But if it's, you sitting in algebra class and you got your eyes down looking at your phone or listening to, whatever, instead of listening to a teacher, it's an issue.
We don't currently have a ban on personal devices at Laurel beyond the cell phone. And this is a trial period. We're seeing how that plays out and whether our students, and we have a smaller school, we have an ability to kind of negotiate and navigate that kind of device use a little more easily because it's harder to hide when you're using an iPad or something like that. So currently, we're just on a cell phone ban.
Hi, my name is Claire Nolker with St. Joseph Academy. My question is, if something happens at a school with a policy that takes phones, what if these expensive items bought with like the students or their family's own money? What is the school's plan with that specific policy? Because sometimes for other items, the school isn't responsible for anything lost or damaged.
I would say most board policies protect the school because they're assuming that there's a safety risk. In my experience, when that has happened, we have had phones damaged or stolen when they're in the property of a faculty or staff member. The district has covered the cost of replacement.
I definitely looked at something wood to knock on it because with that, I think I'm more on the side of if your phone has to be taken, it's some kind of rule or something like that you're breaking or some kind of immediate situation. Most times it's not like the first time I see it, I see it, it's like a warning, or if you've been warned before, then it's like, okay, let's put it in the office in a safe place. If there's any other situation where that device is being put in a place of harm or anything like that, it goes back to the original, sin of the situation, which was you violated a policy. So, not to say that I want to go around breaking phones or anything like that, but it would still be in your possession if it wasn't for that issue. So.
When students are being reprimanded and being told to put their phones away, sometimes teachers come across aggressive, and in that way it seems more like a punishment than just being told to do something for your best. How can you guys combat that?
I mentioned before that I think it's about building relationships, and also if you don't have a relationship established with that student that you're approaching, maybe just a simple hello, introduce yourself before you go into the directive. That goes a long way, I think, in establishing some sort of rapport before you're asking for a request.
Okay. I'm Amina from St. Martin de Porres High School. My question was, how is the school's resources, such as Student Square, Parent Square, those who don't know what that is basically just a messaging and email app that is through our school community, but our friends and teachers and parents have it as well. So how is that any different than texting your mom on iMessage?
No. So I know Euclid has a Parent Square, and I think it's an awesome tool for parents to be able to communicate back and forth with teachers, or if there's any kind of situation, we could send out mass alerts. But again, a lot of devices that are in school, that in the one-to-one system, they have different levels of, like we have LineWise, and it's a technology that allows us any kind of situation where a student is messaging something that's like, oh, I'm ready to fight or whatever, those things we get an alert for it. And so again, it's still a monitored way of communicating. So it's still safer than you being able to communicate with another student that goes to a different school or in a different district that, hey, they're bullying me, come up to the school, and then that creates a different situation. It's just a safer method of it.
Hi, my name is Zaire Levert from Solon High School, and with our cell phone policy, we have a really harsh policy. If the teachers see it, like let's say if our phones fall out, they can take it immediately. We have this one security guard specifically who likes to watch the security cameras just for the love of the game, just to take students' phones. And to get your phone back, our parents would have to come up to the school at the end of the school day between, I think, 2:55 and I think 4:15, and it's a major inconvenience for some parents. So what would you say about that policy within itself, about like teachers or security guards just taking phones just for the love of the game?
I love your phrasing. First, kudos to you for that. I think it's really hard for any of us to weigh in about a school policy that's not our own. I would be really hesitant to make those assumptions at the same time that I don't want to downplay your lived experience. I think the channel you want to use is the student to adult communication channel in your school and have more conversation about that. I think that would be the way to go forward Because I don't think any of us has enough context to be able to address it, but it sounds like you've got an interesting conversation coming.
Or, I mean, you could get better at it and you might have a career in the CIA or NSA. Gotta know where those cameras are, man.
Hi, my name is Eleanor Brownsdorf. I'm a senior at Shaker Heights High School, and I have a question specific to Ms. Ferguson. You said that your school has kind of a out and away policy, and to the best of my knowledge, Orange is a relatively small high school. How would a policy like that translate to a school like Shaker with like 2,000 students? How do you think that would translate?
Well, actually, I used to work at Shaker. I was there for 10 years. So I can say that I think a policy that's sound is going to be sound at a small school, will be sound at a larger school. I think the implementation might take a bit more legwork. So, for instance, we don't have security at Orange. I know Shaker has lots of security staff, so I imagine that enforcement of something at a larger school might just take more people on board, better communication, making sure that everyone understands what the policy is, starting with students. But I think it can be enforced even in a larger capacity with the right effort.
Hi, so we have an online question. How do we navigate the fine line between learning digital literacy and which is reality and necessary from Gen Z and Gen Alpha, and promoting a distraction and learning environment?
Could you say the last part of that question one more time? Sorry.
How do we go from the fine line between promoting a distracting and promoting a learning environment?
I think there have been a couple, and maybe you all have seen these, a couple of articles that have come out in the last week or so. I think the first one came out in The Guardian, maybe, but I'm now not remembering the source accurately, saying cell phone bans in and of themselves are not enough, that there's a lot more that needs to happen, that there's parent education, that there's the outside school piece, that there's the digital literacy piece, which I think is related to the question that was just asked. I think that's incumbent on schools as well, to have the parent outreach, to have the social media literacy training. These things are all important. None of these things are gonna work in isolation because the cell phone technology is ubiquitous. It's really hard to get away from it. So you've gotta make sure you're thinking about it from multiple angles. That's the way I would address that question.
It's a tough thought. Ultimately, I still feel the same way with regards to protecting our kids and keeping our kids kids. If there's an opportunity for learning away from the cell phone, then I'm all for it. When it comes to cell phone stuff, I always feel like, again, the amount of distractions, the amount of things that will have to be introduced to you to explain why it's bad. And then we know with anything, once you introduce it to a kid and tell them why it's bad, they're gonna wanna touch the stove. So I think that, just again, keeping technology away from kids until they're of the mental capacity to be able to handle it is still the best policy for things.
Hello.
How's it
Hi.
going?
Okay, so my overall question is, do you think the cell phone policy should be regulated during earlier levels of schooling? And if so, would you keep the policy the same or change it?
So working in again, I did 7 years with CMSD in a pre-K to 8 building, and then I'm now in a K to 5 building. Again, my students this year have an amazing, I don't know if they just understood the rules, but we haven't had any, they know as soon as it comes in the building, put it in their book bag. If I see it in their hands, all I have to do is look at them, and then they'll be like, I got you, Mr. Snowden, I'm putting it up now. And it's like the most wonderful thing. So I think if they understand it at a younger grade and that process goes through, just like with anything else, they'll be used to it when they get to high school. And we never know, it may put them in a better place to be able to utilize and not have the mental health, crisis that we're having now a lot of times, with them being able to not have that cell phone policy, being able to have that cell phone policy in place now will allow them to have a better off high school career where they don't have to worry about some of the mental health disadvantages of cell phone use.
Hello, I'm Nicholas Slocum from Cleveland Heights High School. I'm in 9th grade, and my question is, could students' usage of cell phone be monitored, and could the incentive of freedom be given to them if they use it healthily and correctly?
That's a slippery slope, right? We did have to address that issue at the end of the semester. There, again, through the telephone game was this rumor that maybe at the end of the semester, if we've done well enough from the start of the year to the semester, that we can start using our phones, right? So some students organized a meeting. They wanted to meet with the principal. Hey, we heard this rumor. Can we start using our phones when we come back from winter break, right? Because we've been so great. And so I think that sort of negates the whole purpose of the policy, right? It's not like, oh, you've been great, so now you can start using this thing that we're saying is so bad for you. So I think it's difficult to do that. We have gone as far as limiting cell phone use, not even during lunch periods or passing periods. I'm not sure if that's the same in other buildings as well, but I think it's difficult to say you can use it in this place at this time, but not at this place at that time.
I think for purposes of clarity, you gotta make it clean. And I would agree that it's a slippery slope. And I would go back to that point that it's not it really isn't punishment. It's not about punishing students. So it's not about you got something taken away for bad behavior, so now you can have it back for good behavior. It's the device and what it does.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm coming to you as a parent of students from Solon High School, administrative lens, because I have that as well. I've been a teacher with Cleveland schools for over 20 years. We are in this room, all of the young people are 21st century learners, correct? So with that being said, my question is, should we, as a whole, the governor, ban technology from 21st century learners? Before I came here, I was playing a video in my classroom. The internet stopped working. But if the phones were in yonder pouches, they would not have been able to watch the video. There are certain apps that are banned that we cannot watch or look at or be involved with CMSD. So what do we as educators do? My personal opinion is it's a management issue, but my question lies with you. Should it be banned by the governor or should it be based on situation?
I think, oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I think one, the aspect of it being banned by the governor allows for more teeth for schools to have in policy, because it's kind of like that, well, it's not me, this is the law kind of situation, but I think it's still for the same reasons. It's still to protect kids. In that one instance, it may have been a benefit. It may be different apps that may be useful for students, but I think the amount of usefulness compared to the amount of fights and other situations safety-wise are outweighed in that respect compared to like the usefulness of it. But again, I don't think that there are too many things that are useful that you could do on a cell phone that you can't do on a laptop that's issued by your school district. Yeah, unless the Wi-Fi goes out.
I would say, yeah, I wouldn't think of cell phone bans as technology bans, generally speaking. Those are different things.
Good morning. My name is Kimorian. I currently attend Collinwood High School. Mr. Snowden, earlier you said something about the phones kind of being a double-sided sword. I just kind of want to ask you, now more than ever, since a lot of kids don't have their phones, they're more prone to getting into physical altercations because they're face-to-face and they can't necessarily go online and chat about it and do things of that nature. So I just want to ask, how are we supposed to go about that?
Thank you, Kamaria, former student. So I think, one, I do not think that internet gangsters have ever created a situation that did not result in something physical when they were face-to-face. At the end of the day, any kind of situation that you're going to get into face-to-face, just because you're behind closed doors and in your home does not mean that you're safe. And I even argue that it takes away from your skills in diffusing the situation, de-escalating, so that you don't result in a fight by practicing, being at home and being able to say what you want to say behind closed doors. I think that is one of the most detrimental things to our society. On social media, I could go home and I could say whatever I want to say about any NFL player. But if we face to face and they 6'5", 320, not a small guy, but that's not a fight I really want to take on. But I think that that's also one of those things that was a benefit of, growing up in an age without cell phones, because you had to face things. You couldn't just go home and, say what you want to say behind closed doors. You actually had to realize, like, this has an impact on somebody. And part of growing up is being able, whether it's going to be in dating, working in a career, being face-to-face in any kind of career, you're going to have to read people. You're going to have to be able to have that kind of social emotional intelligence to see what I'm saying is affecting this person. And if I can't see that person, it's taken away from me my ability to gain that skill. And that's something that, if you ever think about when you're playing Call of Duty or anything like that, I assume you play Call of Duty. There are things that you will do in a video game that you won't do in real life, because in real life, you have to bear the weight of those actions. When you're on the cell phone saying things, you have to, think about what weight would it have if I'm face-to-face with this person. So, again, face-to-face good, behind closed doors and Twitter fingers bad.
Thank you all for joining us at the City Club of Cleveland for our Youth Forum Council, Phones in Schools, Balancing Learning, Safety, and Freedom. My name is Nakshatra Mohan, and I'm a junior at Brexel Broadview Heights High School and a member of the City Club of Cleveland's Youth Forum Council. Thank you again to our panelists, Jasmine Ferguson, Mario Snowden, and Megan Weiskopf, for taking the time out of your busy schedules and joining us today. It was truly a pleasure having you. I would also like to recognize all of the schools that we have represented in the room: Andrew Osborne Academy, Cleveland Heights University Heights Schools, Collinwood High School, Collinwood Upper Bound Program, Garfield Heights High School, Garrett Morgan School of Leadership and Innovation, John Adams College and Career Academy, John F. Kennedy High School, John Marshall School of Information Technology, Laurel School, Lincoln West High School, Orange High School, St. Joseph Academy, St. Martin de Porres High School, Shaker Heights High School, Solon High School, and Wycliffe High School. Additionally, we would like to acknowledge Northeastern Ohio Education Association, Case Western Reserve University, and Orange Elementary PTA for being present at today's forum. The Youth Forum Council would also like to extend a tremendous thank you to our sponsors, Nordson, the George W. Codrington Charitable Foundation, AT&T, Martha Holden Jennings Foundation, and Doris C. Mikulski Trust for your continued support. This morning, you heard Karthik mention an opportunity to win up to $1,000. If you're a high school student or teach high school students, we also want to highlight the City Club's annual Hope and Stanley Adelstein essay contest. This year's theme is free speech and student protest. The focus is on how schools and students can find the right balance when it comes to protests and expressing opinions. Should schools punish students for speaking out, or does the right to free speech protect their protests? How much control should schools have, and where should they draw the line? To view the full prompt and to learn more information about the monetary awards available for high school winners, please visit the Students tab at cityclub.org or speak with Ariana Smith before leaving today. There are roughly 2.5 weeks left to apply for this year's contest. The deadline is Friday, February 28th. If you enjoyed today's forum, save the date for our last forum of the year on April 15th, titled Assessing Information in the Social Media Era: How Gen Z Navigates the News. Check out the forums page at cityclub.org for additional information. On Friday, March 14th, the City Club will also be hosting the annual High School Debate Championship. For any educators in the room or listening to today's forum, if you are interested in bringing your students to those or any other future forum, please email our Youth Forum Council Advisor, Ariana Smith at cityclub.org. That brings us to the end of today's forum. Thank you to our incredible panelists, student attendees, and City Club guests. This forum is now adjourned.
For information on upcoming speakers or for podcasts of the City Club, go to cityclub.org.
Production and distribution of City Club forums on IdeaStream Public Media are made possible by PNC and the United Black Fund of Greater Cleveland, Incorporated.